So you're really giving that one big right, which I told you is the most important one, away to somebody else. So there's that whole flavor. And it truly is called an estate. It's because estates, by definition, have to allow possession, and this does. So that's where, if you wanted to tie it all up, you know what I mean, with a nice little bow. So, what? Let's see what page exactly we're on. I'm going to send a tablet around. Eduardo, you try to sign in.
I signed in and it threw me off 48 hours, and then it kicked me out.
It let you get back in then.
And then I signed back in and then it fixed it.
Okay.
But I don't know that hours.
Right, it shows that you're here. You know, I'll just send Scott a little email saying, you know, he'll figure it out because he probably already knows. So I knew it wouldn't be a big deal. Oh, so it already went around. Okay, so we just signed in. I didn't forget about your, every once in a while somebody forgets to sign out, you know, you're signed in for this. Okay, so you guys stayed a few minutes later so we could talk about the covenant. So we're on page 330. So we could talk about, and both of these I told you are implied for the most part in any lease, meaning even if the language isn't in residential, we're talking about here, a residential lease, you've got the implied covenant of quiet enjoyment and the implied warranty of habitability. So, and I wanted to throw this up on the board real quick. When we went over the, so these are both implied, meaning they don't even have to be worded in the lease. In Illinois, they're in every residential lease. The covenant of quiet enjoyment, it could come up in one of three ways, and I actually didn't say out loud the way it's presented in the lease chapter here. So it could be from owner of real property violating it of another owner of real property. And this is the first time it came up in, you know, chapters 1 and chapter 2, saying, and we said, okay, my deep sea goes so far, but if I start to, you know, enjoy my property or control my property in a way that interferes with a neighboring property or neighbors, you know, could even not have to necessarily be adjacent to you, but other owner of real property, hey, they can go to court and sue you for you're now violating my covenant of quiet enjoyment. The way I presented it the other day, which is a true way, but I want to go over the third way that the book is also talking about here, is one lessee or tenant, right? On the exam, it could come up either way. And this is just another time for us to stop and say, hey, don't forget, you know, we're going to get questions about lessors and lessees. And we, you know, that's probably the easiest of all the ors versus ees. But the tenant lessee violating another tenant lessee's right to quiet enjoyment. So that's why I gave the example. I had somebody in the past a few times ago. She and her roommates unfortunately were about to be evicted. Next step sounded like they were actually going to take him to court because that dog, right, wouldn't shut up all day long. It was bothering the whole building. And then the third one, which is what is being presented right here, is that the tenant and the, so I'll put lessor and lessee up here. This guy can't violate this guy's, that's the third way, you know, to talk about the covenant of quiet enjoyment. The actual landlord, so the owner, back to this example, right, this is also going to be the owner can't violate the tenant's right to quiet enjoyment. Meaning that when I signed up, when I signed that contract, that lease, to pay so much money, promised to pay so much money, in exchange for the promise of exclusive use and possession of that unit, that lessor, when they give away exclusive use and possession, means just that. Like, I'm the only one, I'm the lessee, that's got the legal right to go in there freely, in and out. Otherwise, if the landlord wants to come in, or needs to come in, the want would probably be because they're going to show it. You didn't renew that lease, and so there's so many, you know, so much time before you actually end your leasehold. That most leases all have that clause in there, you know, so that the landlord can gain the right to what interfere with your covenant of quiet enjoyment. That's what, you know, that's what I'm trying to just stop talking about here. So there are three ways that that could potentially come up in a question on the exam too. So it's owner versus owner, lessee versus lessee, and then the owner not violate, and that's what's talked about right above the warranty habitability here, is option number 3. But this one also exists, they just don't talk about it too much in the book. They actually represent the last one. So Illinois doesn't have an actual law in the books that says, hey, if I want to show it, I got to give you a 48-hour notice, I got to give you a 24-hour notice. But those are what's kind of typical. Usually the 48 hours becomes very customary, okay, I'm going to show it in 2 days. Or the other bucket would have been if there's a maintenance issue / emergency, right? There's either a medical or physical emergency in there or a maintenance, like, you know, the thing I shared with you with my parents where the pipe had burst above. You know, that gave that, I mean, we were trying to get them there. It wasn't like they were trying to, you know, burst the doors down on us. We had our time. But if that had been the right, they'd be like, we got to come in, and it wouldn't have been violating this. You will, I mean, real high percentage likelihood that you'll get a question on that implied warranty of habitability. And that is a warranty, so it just sounds a little stronger too than, you know, covenant just means agreement, right? It's another word to say agreement, covenant is. But a warranty, right? We all feel when we buy something, we feel like we've been warranted. There's a bigger promise, or so it is a like a more serious right that is instilled in the lessee when you think about it, because if the landlord is violating the warranty of habitability, that means that they are leasing a unit that has defects that either affect that they're unsafe, unsanitary, or unfit for human occupancy. Those are, like I told you the other day, those are the keywords, the catchphrases. And then that when you flip to page 304, it's the best. I mean, 331. It's a real good list of what would qualify as, you know, conditions in a leased unit that would make it unsafe, unsanitary. And we said all the utilities, bless you, anything, you know, providing environmental controls, making it, you know, we talked about Mila's issue of it's not warm enough. That's definitely an issue. Any type of water coming in, any infestation, you know, of anything that you would sign up to be living with you. So then the 3 options you should know, you should be familiar with. What are my outs then? And we were basically talking about them, but they're right here, bulletin. You should be familiar with that term. Constructive eviction. And you would juxtapose constructive eviction with, it's called actual eviction. And that's where we go in and file, you know, the forcible entry and detainer case, which is the other, you know, which is the Illinois word for an eviction case. But constructive eviction is this. It's just in the scenario where the landlord is not addressing, or at least this is one good example of it, it's where the landlord isn't addressing that condition that's making, you know, them violate the warranty of habitability. And your argument or your defense back to them is, I have no option but to move out now because you're causing it to not be habitable here. So I have to move. So you're not actually evicting me. So it's actually, you know, an actual eviction. The lessee's on the defense, right? They're getting kicked out. But in a constructive eviction, you're using it as a defense, but it's called an affirmative defense because you're on the saying, hey, you know, this is my good argument I've got. So it's called constructive eviction. You can move out. And what it means is you won't be on the hook then for the number of months left in your lease, because that's what the damages would be on the landlord's part, right? However many months you were still signed up for on that contract. And be familiar with this phrase, the duty to mitigate damages. And that's right around what we're talking here. Duty, this would be a landlord's duty to mitigate damages. Most leases, or any tenant would, if they had a lawyer to look at their lease, a tenant would want there to be landlord's duty to mitigate damages in there. Because that would mean, okay, I'm going to break the lease. Maybe, you know, there's no doubt, hey, I'm breaching. But you now have to offer the apartment would be what the best example is, what will be on the landlord's shoulders to mitigate, you know, that they were upholding their duty. They're going to advertise your apartment now for sale to try to get somebody in there. Because once all they really care about, it's like a generic tenant in a sense, right? As long as they're a good tenant paying the rent, what do we care? You know, as long as the rent, I mean, you know, I'm the landlord, what do we care? So be familiar with that phrase and the whole, you know, leasehold world. This is a big duty on the landlord's part. if somebody breached, or, you know, we're gonna, I guess, I told you in the contracts chapter, you know, we talk about just breaching in general. But right, breaching is when you illegally, you don't have a legal, you know, right to hang your hat on, so you illegally violate one of the terms of the contract that you have with somebody. It could be any kind of contract. This just happened to be a lease. And now you could either do, so this was option one, you could say, hey, you constructively evicted me, I'm going to move out. You violated the warranty of habitability, that's the best example. You know, you'd have the legal footing to stand on as a tenant. The other option, some of you people stayed after the other day and we were talking about this, is you could enter into what's called self-help. And so in Illinois, you know this really can, the landlord has no right to self-help, meaning they can't go in, change your locks, turn your utilities off, you know, to get you out. They can't file a forcible entry, in residential especially, and you know, get a residential tenant out that way. But the tenants, one of their options if the landlord is violating a duty would be called self-help. And that means that you go in as the tenant yourself, pay for, hire a third-party contractor or whatever to come in, and Mahila has an example, her heat's not, you know, and the landlord has specifically told her the sensor's not working. So she would at least know, hey, my sensor's not working, come in and fix it. The rule in Illinois caps it that it can't cost, if this is the option you're trying to engage in, you can't have the repairs cost more than a month's rent. You're supposed to then take what you paid and deduct it from your next month's rent, obviously with appropriate, you know, paper backup to show what you had to do. And so that's the second option. So we got constructive eviction, self-help, and then the third option would just be sue for damages. And that could mean, you know, you're staying there and you're filing a lawsuit against them for whatever, you know, it might be that they're violating. So those are the three options. This we already talked about, the good news, second pair, if you're following along in the book, 331. We talked about that security deposit rule. Most people in here will get a question on that. And the rule was this: if I'm a landlord and I have 25 or more units in my, like, let's say in my, you know, in my whole investment portfolio, then the light switch went on for me for this to happen, 25 or more units. If I do charge a security deposit, I have another option we talked about to charge a move-in fee. So it's either going to be security deposit or move-in fee. But if I do call it a security deposit, then it truly is a security deposit, and I collect it, I have to do two things. A, put it in an interest-bearing escrow account. And then twice a year, it basically boils down to, because most leases are for a year, and then do it every 6 months. So either way you want to look at it, but the law says every 6 months, you have to then pay the interest on the security deposit to the tenant. And if you don't send that, which oftentimes, like we said the other day, ends up being very nominal check, because, you know, security deposits a couple thousand, $2,000 at the most, you've got it in a bank account that's earning nominal interest, savings account. So if they don't, there's kind of a windfall though. They can sue the landlord and they can get at least the whole security deposit back, if not sometimes double, or like I said, triple. So the Chicago tenant landlord ordinance is more generous to tenants than the rest of Illinois. But you will not get specific questions on Chicago tenant landlord ordinance on the exam, or the state plan. So just know that these move-in fees exist though, and a lot of landlords, as a result, so they don't get quote unquote burned from that law as it exists, have started to charge. And the big difference, right, that ended up coming down the pike is that these are non-refundable, these move-in fees, and that this is, that's why I said, if you call it this, it is by law refundable if it's not necessary to restore the premises to a prior condition. If the landlord needs to dip into it, that's its legal purpose. You know, if you damage the property as a lessee, then those monies were there to protect the landlord's property.